An argument can be made that living a good life is the most fundamental of our conscious desires. Now, what exactly this good means and should mean is what divides people. One of the strongest such analyses was made more than 2000 years ago by Western philosophy's master, Plato. In this video, I will attempt to make a strong case as to why you might want to live your life according to some of the principles he outlined. So, buckle up, as this can be one of those videos on this channel that might have a significant impact on how you decide to structure your life henceforth. No promises though. We have already covered significant details of Plato's philosophy on this channel. Like most good philosophers, his ethical theory is intricately related to other parts of his philosophical system, like a well oiled machine. Don't worry, I am not asking you to compulsorily watch those first before moving ahead, but a familiarity with some of those points will be helpful. In any case, I have structured this video to be self-contained. Any discussion about how morality was viewed in ancient Greece will involve the term virtue. It is difficult for modern people who have not immersed themselves in moral philosophy to understand just how significant this concept is. For this is a personal observation, but mainstream contemporary moral and philosophical discourse isn't centered around individual moral qualities much. I feel, and I am not presenting thorough arguments here because this is just an incipient idea, that popular discourse is much concerned with actions of large groups as such. What seems to matter more to people, especially after how social media has altered politics, is how you coalesce with people as you amplify your specific stance. In contrast, the idea of virtue for the ancient Greeks is first and foremost a personal concern. The Greek term in question is arete, which many scholars believe cannot be perfectly translated into any English word. However, the most commonly accepted translation is virtue, with certain caveats. But for the purposes of this video, we will be using the same. Let us start by focusing on some examples of virtues: honesty, courage, temperance, and so on. Is there something that connects them all? I mean, on first glance, they do seem quite distinct, and it is easily conceivable to think of a tyrant who is not honest but is insanely courageous, or an honest man who isn't the most in control of his emotions. However, I am asking this question on a much deeper level. Is there something that qualifies a character trait to become a virtue? But why are we talking about virtues in the first place? This is simply because, to Plato, the attainment of a human's highest good is the central concern of ethics. This highest good, which is synonymous with happiness, is to be achieved by the pursuit of virtue. That's it. The previous two sentences are the most succinct summarization of Plato's entire ethical system. If one is to follow Plato's ethical system as it is meant to be, one will be the happiest one can ever be. There are no exceptions to this because, as we will see, If you disagree with Plato's account of what true happiness is, you are probably doing it because of a lack of true knowledge. So, let us unpack this further because all of us want to be the happiest we can possibly be. In almost every Platonic dialogue that is concerned with virtue, Socrates focuses his attention on one single virtue. The other characters try to define it. There is a lengthy debate in which Socrates cross examines it. The definition is found to be inadequate. Socrates himself is not able to give a satisfactory definition, and the dialogue ends inconclusively. However, there are significant progresses made along the way, and a lot of popular views are shown to be flawed or even harmful. The only reason Socrates or Plato aren't able to give conclusive definitions is because of the nature of the task at hand. The subject matter at hand isn't like physics or mathematics, where a law can cover every single event without fail. This is the human life we are talking about, where every situation is radically different from the others because of the myriad choices and contexts made possible by the free will of innumerable actors, or at least the appearance of free will of the said actors. Plato identified what came to be known as the four cardinal virtues, each related to the different compartments of the soul we saw in the previous video. Thus, each of wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice is related to distinct parts of the soul. Wisdom obviously is related to the rational part of the soul, courage to the spirited part, and temperance to the watchful union of the spirited and appetitive parts. Justice can only be talked about when all the three parts of the soul are in harmony, something to which we shall return in a while. And as we have seen in a previous video, the rational part of the soul is concerned with detached introspection about timeless truths of the world of forms, which is something that links Plato's metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics together, since this is also the pathway to ultimate wisdom that will help us in our pursuit of virtue and a happy life. So, the pursuit of virtue is the road to true happiness. Since all the virtues have an underlying unity, virtue is also deeply identified with knowledge. This leads us to the contentious idea that no one takes part in evil knowingly. To this, one can easily point out how there are innumerable cases of people doing evil after cold, calculative deliberation. And Plato will reply that these were simply cases because the knowledge of the good was obscured. One can even argue that sometimes people either never realize or accept, even if they know deep down, how detrimental their actions truly were till the very end. So, the idea that the said evil act was done because true knowledge was obscured either momentarily or for long durations by the onslaught of passions stands. If someone would genuinely, consciously realize all, and I mean all, the different aspects in which taking part in evil will harm oneself, one would never ever take part in any evil act, for there are obviously some immediate benefits that people see when they commit evil, but they always fail to realize the many, often long term, drawbacks. This is one of the strongest ideas I have personally ever come across. There is yet another analogy through which Plato tries to show us what the different virtues are. But this analogy is something that cannot be defended morally, at least in my opinion. Plato here links his moral theory to his conception of an ideal state. Plato's ideal state is one where the citizens are divided into three classes: the rulers, the soldiers, and the rest. The three parts of the soul correspond to these three classes. The virtue of wisdom belongs to the philosophical rulers, that of courage to its soldiers, and temperance to its working class. When each citizen of the polity fulfills their role exactly in this manner, justice, which is the harmony of the three classes, manifests itself in its entirety. In such a society, not only is the whole society experiencing justice to its fullest, but each individual soul is in a harmonious balance too. If you find this proposed division of society appealing to conduct in real life, please consult a qualified therapist. Luckily for us, there are other ways in which Plato talked about virtues, justice, and happiness. Since virtue is so integral to happiness, in fact, since happiness is to be achieved through virtue, it would be quite demotivating if the degree to which we can be virtuous is decided by our birth. Luckily, Plato's conception isn't so fatalistic, and he tells us that we can, indeed, strengthen our virtues through practice once we finally have the knowledge that we are responsible for our moral actions and hence happiness. Virtues can be acquired, and it is in our best interests that we develop them, since they are an essential path to happiness. But at this point, almost everyone will question that where does this leave us with the thing that is pleasure? Since we can easily imagine situations where virtues such as wisdom and temperance will inevitably clash with our deepest desires to indulge in short and long term pleasures. Crucially, in the famous dialogue Philebus, there is an argument that says that a truly happy and well rounded life is the one that is able to balance both pleasure and wisdom. Through the dialogue, even Plato, an idealist, is willing to concede that moderate pleasures are necessary for a good life. In fact, true knowledge must know how to balance the two. Otherwise, will it actually be true knowledge if it goes so against the instincts of life? And I guess most people do realize that pitting pleasure against wisdom or rationality isn't that big of an issue when it comes to one's practical life. Sure, it is a philosophical problem, since philosophy is based on arguments that are highly logical and abstract, because it aims to tell us truths that universally apply to each and every situation. In addition, philosophers routinely take a phenomena to its extreme in order to analyze every single one of its dimensions. Thankfully, real life isn't like that. True wisdom would know how to balance pleasure with rationally detached actions. That is how life is. It is a lived thing, not a balance sheet that has to be calculated using the mind. Rational logic isn't the only thing that we have at our disposal. We also have good instincts and unconscious wisdom, as Nietzsche and Carl Jung would tell us. And so, if you are enamored by Plato's theory and would like to apply it to your life, it would go something like this. The pursuit of virtue would be the primary concern. Happiness would inevitably follow. And though actions guided by wisdom are ranked above actions done in the pursuit of pleasure, proportionality is still important. The main takeaway, then, is that even if it might not seem to be the case, living a just, virtuous life is ultimately the life that will give one the greatest happiness when all, and I mean all, aspects of life are considered.